Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Packer Universe podcast. We're a Green Bay Packers fan podcast that brings you topical and relevant Packers news along with our most humble, subjective opinions. The Super Bowl is over. It's the offseason now. Last time we reviewed the Packers' own free agents, but what about the Packers acquiring free agents? We'll delve into that and some more on episode 259. We're recording this on a Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. I'm your host, Tay, and joining me in studio tonight is our one and only
Ren. What up, Tay? Happy offseason. How we doing on a Wednesday? Valentine's Day, Tay. What a better way than to spend a Valentine's Day staring directly across this table.
Into my eyes.
Into your own eyes.
Well, happy Valentine's Day, Ren. Thanks for being my Valentine today.
Hey, Tay. I mean, when I had the choice between my wife and doing a podcast with you tonight, it was
hands down
pretty easy.
Yeah.
I was like, let's go do some podcasting.
Let's do this.
No, that's not how that went down, Tay. But yes, I was able to make it over. I didn't see your wife anywhere in the house, so I'm not sure. Maybe you're in trouble and you needed a little. You needed some kind of Valentine on Valentine's Day, so I'm here to rescue you.
No, yeah, thank you very much. I need the company. Usually during the season, my Valentine is Carrington, but now it's you in the off season.
Whoa, I see what you did there, Tay. So, wow.
And, the Super Bowl is over, and I know that was one of your check boxes to discuss tonight, so we'll get to that. But it's the off season, not officially, right? The new league year hasn't started yet, but we are, the Super Bowl's done, so it's the next year, right? So yeah. we're in a sense there already, and what do we talk about? We were out of the running 2-3 weeks ago, and now what do? It's the off season. We focus on free agency and the draft. So those are the kind of like two topics now that are going to be driven into the ground, and it's only the week after the Super Bowl. But that's what we do. That's what we do.
These mock drafts are going to get hot and heavy. We'll eventually get to the point where we really like some players at specific positions that ultimately won't be chosen by the Packers.
Correct.
So why even talk about it? And I'm not sure why any fans or any podcasters or any of us do this with that every year. Like, what's the point?
Well, people click on it. People like to hear it. I don't know.
Just let it happen, and we'll get our guys and talk about them after the fact. I get to the point now where I'm just like, I hate even speculating or liking a guy because it just doesn't work out that way.
Can you go back and any of the drafts that we had? Let me scroll down.
There's
here.
always a guy or two that'll pop into it.
But
sure.
Are any of the guys that we've selected anybody on your was on your radar in that particular year? I mean, maybe you have.
We talked about Lucas Van Ness being a Packers type. I mean, that I don't think was necessarily the guy we necessarily wanted to, end up with the Packers at 13 last year. But hey, good pick. Looks like Lucas is heading in the right direction.
I mean, Christian Watson.
2 years ago was a guy. Maybe. Yeah, we speedster. Talked about. Obviously, we did talk about Lucas Musgrave last year.
Yeah.
So he was definitely one of those couple tight ends we highlighted. Jaden Reed kind of came out of left field. I know that, Anders Carlson was not a talking point as a guy we think they should draft.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They drafted him to.
It's
guys like Kingsley Enagbari a couple years ago. Where he was for a value guy, those kind of things. No, but they're generally most of these things. No, they don't get talked about.
And it's not to say that that's not interesting to look at and to dive into, but I'm seeing tons of it already. It's let's dive into this guy. He could be the next Packer on the draft boards, and it's just like I don't know. I guess you're not working for a football team or an organization, so you're just purely speculating here. And it doesn't really do any good to try to pin that down for any reason. So I'll let the experts do, all the college guys that watch those people go for it. You can rank them and stuff like that. And there, I like the combine because like at that point you're watching all these guys do all these drills and you're like, wow, that guy was good. Actually, that guy was good. So it's kind of like, okay, there are a few people here that are, catch your eye, but to try to write them in as the Packers pick. But what we can do, what's more easy for at least like you and I, Ren, is to like look at like what are the Packers' needs? Where should they go? What direction should Goody be going here?
Bingo. Right? I mean, that's actually one of my talking points today, and I have a question for you a little bit later. But there are some things we can quantify with the draft, right? We know that Brian Gutekunst has a type, right? We know that relative athletic score piece we talk about every year as we ramp up to that. He definitely likes athletes, sometimes to the detriment. Sometimes you got to pick the football player too.
Sometimes it didn't work.
Just because a guy's super athletic doesn't mean, you got to be picking athletes all the time. Sometimes you want the football player who's just going to, step outside the box, i.e., Carl Brooks, doesn't hit every marker there, but heck of a draft pick who, in recent remocks of, last year's first round, he'd be taken in the first round. So how well thought of he is. But so definitely there's type. We know it. So you can look for high relative athletic scores. That's going to be something that Brian Gutekunst is going to look at. And there are going to be guys, certainly we're going to talk about positions where they might go more often than not in this year's draft that, you're going to want an athlete. But before we get there, Tay, I'm actually interested to actually talk about the Super Bowl and get it out of the way because I found it to be an interesting football game, obviously, pretty boring. That first half. However, we ended up, and I kind of felt it going that way. I'm like, this thing's going to just be some fireworks in the second half. It's got to be, right? Because it just kind of seemed like, when you watch animal programming with like Marty Stauffer back in the 80s, and it kind of, I think that was Wild America, and it opened with two rams smashing into each other and then, doing it again. And those two defenses were just kind of just going toe to toe that first half, and nobody was really able to do anything. There's a couple big turnovers that at that point really didn't amount to much. But I saw two football teams today, one of which the Packers beat on a Sunday night, and one of which the Packers really controlled for much of the 60 minutes of football. Mm-hmm. I saw two teams, the Green Bay Packers right now in their current iteration, I think could beat. What were your thoughts when, you could talk to that, talk about the game, whatever you want to say, but that's why I want to bring this all full circle, because again, I go, well, maybe the Packers are, what we saw down the stretch is, pretty, not just a team becoming good, but maybe they're already a pretty good football team today.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the Super Bowl and watch that game, you could see the Packers in that football game and doing, the things that both teams were doing on either side, like creating turnovers and doing some different kind of plays to get the defense, to bite a certain way. I mean, do the Packers have that energized Niners defense? I don't know. Do they have a Sean Jones that can just demolish you and can really get to the quarterback?
Chris Jones,
sorry. Sean. Yeah.
Sean, he was player too.
He's up here on the wall from that picture. He
could do that as well.
But you know what I mean? There may be a little bit of light in some of those aspects, but yeah, I think you're right. I think the Packers could have held their own in that game against either one of those opponents. So I don't know if I'll describe this correctly, but it just kind of makes you feel like, yeah, there's two Super Bowl teams and you have to get to the top, but man, to get there, you had to obviously win and beat everyone that you played against. Yes, it's obvious, but it just kind of stinks when you're sitting there, your sideline, and you see a team that you could handle in the Super Bowl. It just kind of, I don't know, it just feels weird. So, watching that game, I tried to kind of avoid it. Honestly, we talked last time. Ren's got a sneezing attack here. You can just let it go. Let it go, Ren. I don't know what's tickling his nose, if it's that LaCroix or
it is Valentine's Day today.
Hey, I was very indifferent about this game. I didn't want to watch it. My mother actually needed somewhere to watch it, so I invited her over. So she came over and we watched it.
You kept her here late?
She stayed late.
Mama K stayed up real late.
So I was, and I was just kind of paying attention. I was on my phone. I'm doing other stuff, making some food or whatever. I'm just like not paying attention, trying to watch the commercials actually. Yeah, and then it got good. And all of a sudden it's overtime, and I'm like, okay, that was actually one of the most exciting things about the game to me is this overtime thing, and I kind of wanted it to keep going and going. I liked that. I wanted to kind of push the boundary. I had no team. I had no dog in the fight, so I didn't care. Like, let's keep this going. Let's make it interesting here. I love this overtime. I'm at my own house, so who cares? Let's go. So I actually found that personally to be the most interesting aspect. I know that there were some rule changes and stuff, but that first quarter overtime was ending, and they were, all they had to do is the Chiefs had to kick a field goal and to tie it up again, and then they would like start over and next score or win. But I did like that. I liked them implementing the every team gets a possession thing because maybe you finally see that now in live action, and to have it happen in a Super Bowl is kind of interesting. It was
only the second overtime in a Super Bowl ever. Yeah. The other one, the infamous 28-3 lead of the Falcons over the New England Patriots. New England comes back all the way to tie it, and then get to overtime. And I think New England just had I don't know if I am misremembering this, but I think that New England had the possession, scored, and the game was over.
Yeah. So and nobody likes that, right? Nobody.
Right. No, that's not a good thing.
So I love the kind of like equalizing here, the balancing of that overtime rule. That was interesting to me, honestly. So looking at that game, it was better than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't interested in either team really. I guess I'm happy with the outcome. I'm happy for Andy Reid, really. Patrick Mahomes, it's like, whatever. The 49ers, it's like the 49ers are going through what we've gone through. Like
it's pain, Tay. It's hard. They're they got the taste right there.
Yeah.
They can't do it. They can't get it done. They're like these NFC championship appearance games with the Packers and Rodgers and can't get it done.
So I don't feel bad for them. I kind of look at them and say, well, you're in our boat now. Like, this is what has happened to us.
Yeah,
like,
feel the pain.
We went to 3 NFC championships and got beat. We were right on the doorstep. I mean, that's what we're feeling.
And they've been to 2 Super Bowls. Let's throw a couple Super Bowl appearances where we also lose in there, which we remember the San Diego one was really hard. That I remember being we were 19. It sucked. So that's just. That game was fun, Tay. I know there was a lot of criticism with San Francisco saying maybe they did or didn't know the full overtime rule. And to be honest, when, it's right as the Chiefs are throwing that touchdown and the clock's ticking, at that point I'm listening to it on Westwood One with Kevin Harlan. And I'm like, they've got timeouts. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, why are they not using a timeout here? But it's because it would just roll into because they're still in their first possession.
Right. It's
still going to roll into the next period. Like, I'm like, oh. But they ended up still throwing it with 3 seconds left.
Right.
And they win. But what a goofy thing. I think the Niners probably were stupid because, you take first, you get a field goal. Well, Pat essentially has to get at least 3. And that means he gets to play with 4 downs every time.
Yeah. Yep.
So essentially you're giving, the multiple MVP of the league, the best quarterback in the league currently, 4 downs all the way to get to the end zone. Was that a wise choice? Probably not. But hey, if they ended up kicking a field goal and then San Francisco gets it back, they get to kick the field goal. And that's the way Shanahan looked at it. Hey, we control that 1 and 3. Hey, we're good. But yeah, I don't know if anybody can hold Pat giving them 4 downs to get down there. That's just, that was a big ask and maybe a big mistake on their end.
Well, and if the Niners scored a touchdown, then the Patriots, the Chiefs would have to score a touchdown.
Correct, but it still, again, would have had 4 downs to get, he essentially is going to be playing with that as he matriculates the ball down the field, Tay.
And so I know a lot of the players didn't fully understand the rules, but Kyle did. Like, he's the one telling them what to do. So they made that decision knowing what was going on. So I don't feel bad about it. You make a decision, and I don't know. It's just it is. You have to play what the hand you're dealt, and Kyle is more aggressive. coach, and he's kind of like that Dan Campbell thing. It's like, he expects your team to do something. He expects them to win. Did he expect them to kick a field goal only? Probably not, but whatever. It's just, I don't know, that happens. So I don't know. I don't feel bad for the Niners. I know they kind of like, I guess what I'm reading in like headlines is that this was kind of their chance.
The window is closing, Tay. Again, I mentioned last week they have a ton of free agents. They have a ton of guys paid at the $20 million mark. So they just don't have a lot of room with which to work with. Obviously,
and that's a lot.
They suffered some serious injuries in that game.
Greenlaw went down.
Yeah, with an Achilles, so he's done for basically, if not the entire year, 90% of it next year. So they're in, and I think Hargrave, he was going to have meniscus surgery right after they get done with the Super Bowl because he was having some issues. So he's, going to take some time to recover. They've got a lot of things going on. I think the window is closing. I don't think it's closed, but they've got so much talent, so many free agents too that they got a tough road to get back.
And it's just, again, come back to it really quick. It reminds me of the Packers. Like, we're running out of time here. We got these contracts we're pushing everything out, and we got a lot of big names on the roster that have a hefty price tag, especially number one, Aaron Rodgers.
Number 1, 2, yeah.
And so I kind of just okay, we've been there. We know how it is.
And what a kind of reset the Packers have done. We'll get to it. There's still some cans kicked down the road affecting the cap currently into 2025, 26, and 27 on some of these contracts, which isn't great. But the Packers, as they get through this year and then into next, are really going to start to open up some more monetary windows. Obviously, the Jordan extension is going to eat into some of that. But, kind of talking about the Super Bowl first, too, Tay, and how the Packers looked and how they might, match up against these teams again. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because we're going to talk about, hey, where does this team today? It's going to come up a little bit. Where does this team need to kind of focus these priorities now that, hey, the start of the rebuild, but really we called it the reset, is well underway now. We know what they're capable of. So where can they really focus to maybe take this thing to the next level next season? And as the young and upcomer start to push a team maybe like the Chiefs for a championship. And I think it all ties in together, man. And how... Let's maybe even talk about the top 5 teams in the NFC and how do the Packers fall into that now in comparison to see what team is trending what direction.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I love how you said, how do they like, where do they go get them? Like, where are the parts of the team that they need to focus on? But I guess I also want to say to you is how do you think this is going to happen for Brian? What I mean by that is, like, last year was this kind of like reset. Like, okay, we have players that have been waiting in the wings. They're starters. We're bringing in some young talent.
Now I'm going to go draft all these pass catchers.
And we did that
with my young guy, who I think is a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and now that ka-ching, that worked out. We got a solid base. Now what do you do? Looks like, I feel like the Packers window just kind of opened up a little crack. But now does that change things, Ren? That's my question to you. Just, this was kind of like what we thought was going to be like a 2, 3, 4 year thing. But all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, this could be a lot sooner than that. And we could next year be knocking at the playoff door, if going deep into it potentially, maybe make it to the Super Bowl like this year. So what does Brian do? Is he more aggressive, or does he basically stay young and cheap? And he's looking towards the draft. He's not going to, because he mentioned, we didn't talk about this last week when he mentioned in his post-season interview. He kind of laid out the fact, I'm paraphrasing here, that there's not a lot of players that we're going to extend in season anymore. We have a lot less dead cap space. So we have room, we have some ammunition to go get some free agents. And that's basically what he's like, well, if that, we might be doing that. And so that was interesting to hear him actually kind of like say, like, yeah, I think we're, we do have room to go out and be more aggressive than usual in free agency. So when you look at this as a whole, okay, we thought maybe a few years of just draft and develop, go low on some of these contracts. Let's just start building the foundation. But okay, we've kind of laid the foundation pretty quick. So what does Brian do now? Does he go after these free agents and where. And so I think it's the how and the where now that is kind of like up for speculation by Packer Universe here. And I guess that's kind of what I'm asking you is first is, do you think Brian's going to be aggressive, or will he be classic Packers and play this, pretty close?
No, I think he's being 100% honest. And yeah, he did say that. He said, we can kick the can on some of these current deals that are in place and kick them down the road, although we prefer not to do that. He said, I think we'll have some of the flexibility once we get there to bring in a player or two that can impact this football team. So I think that the free agency window is opening. They currently sit $2.8 million over the cap at this point, Tay. So it is going to take some machinations to just, number one, get to at cap level prior to the new league year on March the 13th. And then obviously you need 10 just for your another 10 million just for your draft transactions and some of the other things you're going to do. You're probably another 5 to 10 million. So they're going to need to create some room, but they have the ability to do it. Obviously we'll get into that a little bit later in the show here, Tay, but they have the ability to move a few contracts, just bang, 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 1, 2, 3 contracts, and suddenly open up about $40 million like it's nothing, Tay.
So, okay, if that happens,
and it will,
yes, some of that has to happen.
I mean, David Bakhtiari, there's not a chance we'll get to him that he's on the roster, Tay, based on what he costs, knowing that he might not be available. Absolutely, no way he'll be a casualty.
How aggressive do you think Brian will be? I mean, I guess, do you think?
I got to think, Tay, they've got probably 2 positions pinpointed with, just like a draft board, a board of guys that they're going to go after. And I think they're going to be aggressive at those 1 to 2 positions and get one of the guys they want. Yes, I do. I think they're going to get a vet.
I think the bread and butter of the Packers and Brian Gutekunst and his people, his crew there, has always been the draft.
100%. I agree.
And there's a lot of ammunition in those first 3 rounds. I love that. I can't wait for that. That's almost like unto itself, because you can never guarantee how someone will be when they come out and how much they will actually contribute and participate. So that's kind of like an unknown, and that it's an unknown. It's a known unknown. Like, you can't really guarantee that. So
can I just interject there? We don't know how much they'll contribute, but wasn't it kind of a breath of fresh air? The Packer way is always like, we take these guys along slowly. And then you're like, by year 3, you're like, finally, like this year, they're just like, throw them in. We don't have a choice. And then by week 10, you're like, oh, these Tucker Kraft can play tight end. Week 3, you're like, Tucker Kraft, can that guy do anything?
Yeah.
That's what can happen with reps.
Yep.
Mixing guys in. Just get their feet wet sometimes. Now, as you get to be a better team, you maybe don't have that luxury to let a guy make as many mistakes. But sure, when you're starting to crack open this window instead of the window closing, you gotta, do it cheap and go for it.
And I don't know what the answer is. It was it because we just decided, throw these guys in. Then we got these young guys, go out there and do it. And then they had that confidence, that innate confidence, almost naivete about not knowing things that after being in the league so long, you don't know those things. So you just go out there and play. Is it that, or is it like is Brian selecting better players now? Like before, it was like a Josiah DeGuara. Like, when's he gonna do everything we wanted him to do? Like Amari Rodgers. Like, okay, we're waiting. And gone is the time of that stuff. I think Brian Gutekunst doesn't have he doesn't have the patience for that anymore. And this is the time to test that. And then the cream will rise to the top. And then we saw that this year. And he kind of nailed most of these players. So I don't know what happened there, but it worked and it was successful. So you kind of like hope that happens again. And I'm okay with taking risks on young players right now in this situation that we're in. Do it again. So I don't mind draft and develop this year again. Take areas of need, take the players you want, and then fit them in, and let's go, young talent, go. I'm kind of torn about what we should do in free agency, honestly. We have huge holes at safety, developing at linebacker. You can always use offensive lines players. So to me, it's like, that's the struggle I have. Do you go now all in free agency for these holes that you see? Or do you just kind of say, this next year too is going to be like last year. We're just going to plug and play. We're going to get these guys reps. We're going to let them play. And then whatever happens. Anders Carlson, put him in. He might miss a few in the postseason. Put him in, like, is it that kind of mentality, Ren? Or now that the window cracked a little bit, is it a little more like, okay, we got to take this more seriously?
I think it's a little bit of both. And I think it's last year they had the luxury or non-luxury of, they were up against cap day, so they had to bring a bunch of guys in. They, all these old receivers left the room, and I think it's a little bit of a luxury that you could throw young guys at the board there. Now, do you want to throw a bunch of young offensive linemen at a line next year in replacement of guys that have been there? No, you don't want to do that, because that's a different position, and that can yield much worse results. So it factors into the position that a person plays and how the Packers are implementing that, versus, them letting guys just, get their feet wet. It's, they balance that well, but I think there'll be less and less of, we can, just let them go figure it out if we have a whole position group that's green. And this year you could say that one of them that's going to be in that position that you're going to have to go throw some young guys at it, that they're going to probably draft at least two, would be safety. But do you want to have all young guys back there,
right?
And say, to hell with it, because now we got a brand new defensive scheme. And sure, some of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about here with former players talking about Jeff Hafley, you're going to love what they have to say about him. But they might be in a position where no, you definitely, that's where you target a potential veteran in free agency. So you offset a little bit of that. Yeah, some of these young guys are going to get some reps, but you also have a veteran leader back there to go along with those rookies that are pressed into service.
That bar for you, that threshold that threshold bar for safety, is that above Savage and Jonathan Owens right now?
Heck yeah.
You have to have at least one guy above that?
Absolutely, 100%.
Or two, or is it just one and then whatever?
I would say they got to remake the room. They did that. Look at what they'd done, in the last 2 years with wide receiver, and obviously in 1 year with the tight end room. So like Ben Sims and Tucker and Lucas. I mean, that's a brand new rookie tight end room. They did that in 1 year. Now you're going to literally, that the one position group that's going to happen to this year 100% is safety. Now, not to say you're going to have, there's a couple guys on the team still, Anthony Johnson Jr., that's one guy, but you're going to have, again, probably 2 draft picks, and I would guess a veteran safety brought in, and maybe one other guy that you bring back, like a potential, Owens on a vet min deal. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, Tay, as I kind of bounce all over the place here, rank in order of importance for the offseason these positions, Tay. Running back, offensive lineman, safety, linebacker, cornerback, and edge. Six rooms there. Obviously some with a little bit more importance than others, but you've got 6 definite rooms that the Packers are going to focus on in 2024.
You said off season. You talking about free agency, or you're talking about that and the draft?
That and the draft. Off season. It's 2024.
It's hard, but I think you really have to do safety because with the new defensive coordinator, and he's going to play roaming high safety a lot, and I'm really excited for that. So
that's cover one, fam, or single high. Yeah,
single high. I love it. And if we can find that guy, it's going to be so fun to watch this defense. So to me, like, that's number 1 or 1B, like, position to solidify, because it once that's in place, I think the rest of the defense can fall in line. You can plug and play some edge rushers. You can draft a few. That's kind of like that. That's important to me, but maybe you can address that into free agency or even the draft. Cornerback, yes, but we've shown that we can just plug and play some guys that we've handpicked, and it'll be fine. So like now, history has shown us we don't need a bunch of superstars at CB. We can just kind of I trust in our staff to go identify those young players, plug and play. So I'm not worried about that. Running back scares me a little bit too because Aaron Jones, who definitely want back, love to extend him. I want him to be a Packer forever, but he's never on the field forever. So I don't have any confidence in any of those guys. Emmanuel Wilson, sure, let's give him one more shot. Let's give him a training camp, but I think we need a guy there. Offensive line, yes, we could have. I think we have our 5-6 in place if we can get Runyon back. I think minus Bakhtiari, we don't even talk about him. I don't know. I think like there's 5 there that we've had. Definitely need some more. So I think it's safety. I want to say running back, O-line, or second, and then you go linebacker, and then CB, and then defensive line. It's a hard one because it's like, oh, what about this one? Oh, whack-a-mole. But I think like with that new defensive coordinator, I think you really have to solidify his plan, his dream, his focus. Because I think once you start the foundation there, once you get that base settled, I think it'll be a lot easier for the Packers to identify players to fit into that scheme.
I agree, Tay. You got to drop that base. But in Brian's presser last week, one of his quote-unquote pieces too, Tay, was I think the back end is probably where we weren't as consistent as we needed to be, and I'd like that to be shored up. There will probably be some moving pieces there going into next year, but it's kind of like it always is. I want a fast, physical, aggressive defense that plays sound. So he's talking about the back end, that's safety room, because he sees it too. I mean, when you look at those 6 positions we just talked about, those 6 position groups, that's kind of like where they were, again, coming into with receivers 2 years ago or tight ends. They're devoid of talent. It's either way too old or they didn't have any. I mean, so that's it. So I'd say that's a good place for you and I to start today, because I think that safety. So when it comes to these six position groups, Tay, the problem with free agency for some of them is really good offensive linemen. They get paid a lot in free agency. So you almost get priced out when you're $2.8 million over the cap. And even though the Packers are going to do some cap magic here over the next few weeks, and they're going to have around $40 million, 35, 40, that's literally where they're going to end up. Like that is, you're just done with one guy and you can't really do it. So I don't think it'll be offensive lineman in free agency.
Well, let me interject here too. Like just generally speaking, for me, when I've looked at free agent lists, and man, you can just take off the first 15, 20, just gone. Just we're not going to compete with that. We're never going to get top dollar.
Unlikely.
Never. So in my mind, just wipe those off the board, then start your search, start your digging around.
I think cornerbacks in free agency, especially in the way the league is today, the passing league, also just to get a really good one, you pay way too much. It's just not going to happen. The Packers are unlikely, in my opinion, to target cornerback in free agency. I think the veteran edge rushers, I think they could end up with a guy there, because there are a lot of edge rushers that are going to be in the free agent market. We'll talk about them as we get closer to free agency. But especially with the Kingsley and Ibari injury, they're going to need a veteran edge, I think, and not a guy that you want to say, hey, let's get another rookie edge. Not to say they won't draft one at some point, but that's a place that say, hey, if they end up bringing in 2 free agents, a veteran edge that's not a crazy contract, another, hey, prove it kind of thing, or you're an aging vet, maybe you got a year left, hook up with this young, talented team. That'd be one I could see in free agency. Running back, the big names get paid too much, and the Packers are not paying a big name too much money at a position where they clearly understand this thing ages out. Obviously, Aaron Jones is a different factor because he's loved by the head coach. He's loved by the quarterback. I think he's even loved by the GM. He has a place on the team. They'll get that contract probably restructured again this offseason. That is also not a direction I see the Packers spending any money in free agency on. So it does, in my opinion, Tay, like you're saying, looking at a room, I don't think linebacker is going to be the place they're going to go. They're not going to end up trying to go after Patrick Queen, a guy they could have drafted some years ago when they took Jordan Love. I think it's safety. I think safety is an affordable position on the back end where you can find some veteran talent and add one piece and not break the bank.
Yep. And I really do think the Packers will pull the trigger on at least one big name. And I think that's where they go with this. Like, they do have the money, and even Brian mentioning it. Oh yeah, we probably will go, maybe do some, work in the free agency. I think that kind of tells you, that they will. And
they've got a board, right?
They do. And it just makes sense. It makes sense to go out and get somebody. You can draft someone. We will. You can bring in undrafted free agents, all that stuff. We will, but we do need someone that has been better than the last 3-4 years. I know we drafted Savage, and then we had what's his name from the Bears come over.
Adrian Amos was there for a while.
Amos, but there was like a time when that was great, that was fine, but it wasn't like it didn't last, and that's I think what we're looking for here. I really want to hit a home run with whoever we pick, even if it's a draft pick or a free agent. I really want to hit a home run with the safety position because I just know that will help out tremendously the scheme that Hafley wants to implement here. It just makes sense.
And I don't necessarily think they have to hit a home run with the free agency pick. I think they need to get a good guy who I think fits, and then draft a couple guys that they think fit that same potential mold that they can bring along. So one a little earlier, one a little later, and see kind of what sticks. Yeah. That's kind of the way I think they'll end up playing that. But so with Hafley's scheme, basically it's a center field like safety, Tay, who can play deep and cover a lot of ground, along with somebody who is comfortable getting down in the box, helping out against the run or covering the slot. So this kind of the center field guy, he's going to be moving, roving, speed, and a physical, aggressive tackler, somebody who can come up and fill. So there was actually a really great article, I think, based on your little free agent targets you have in bold there. There's a really nice article on Packers Wire by Paul Brettel. He's got one on 3 safeties that might mesh with the Packers.
I looked at that too today, and I was
and a good one on free agency as well. So I mean, you could just go to Packers Wire and read some of Paul's stuff because it's pretty good. But I'll let you kind of get into your list, and I could talk to mine as well.
So I did this on my own. Like I think I started last week. I just went off and looked at the list, and like we stated before, you can take off the first whatever amount of at least when you're looking at a specific player grouping, you can take off the first 3, and then just not even think about it because the Packers aren't going to do that sort of thing. So the way I looked at my list is I didn't really kind of, run through what they did this year, what they did the last few years. What I'm looking at, what Tay's looking at is age, what team they're coming from, what their kind of overall Pro Football Focus score is, and just kind of like, does it make sense? Like, how does it feel? And that's where I came up with my list. And my list actually happened to be what
pretty close. It's not quite.
Paul's
doesn't have everybody there.
No, but like I was like, hey, these are the guys I was picking. So I felt pretty good about it. Just kind of going off my own and looking at it. Mm-hmm. But I've targeted safety Jordan Fuller. He's from the Rams. He's age 25. He's got a 67.9, almost 68 PFF score. Alohi Gilman.
I'm going Alohi Gilman.
Alohi Gilman from the Chargers. He's 26, 86.1 score. I've got Darnell on here just because we'll talk about him in a minute. But I also targeted Jordan Whitehead from the Jets. He's 26 years old with a 68.1 score. Cameron Curl from the Commanders, age 25. He's got a score of 66. And I'm just looking at the teams that like they're not great teams. And so
but like Washington in Curl's case, they have the most cap space of any team in the NFL next year.
Yeah.
So are they going to let a guy like that really get out of the building?
Probably
I doubt
not.
It when they have that much money to spend.
So I guess I look at what team they're coming from, how old they are. You don't want to get too old. And then you got to look at kind of what they did. And that's kind of why I looked at the score the PFF gives them per year. And that's like, okay, well, that's not terrible. There's a lot worse that were out there. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I did. I guess I'm looking at like a repeat of what we did with the linebackers when we brought in the Smith brothers. Those guys weren't
edge rushers, you mean?
Yeah. The Smith edge rushers. Yeah, they weren't, they weren't like the top free agents that year. They were down there a little way. And like,
but that's where like an Alohi, maybe that's kind of like a, Zadarius Smith, who isn't well known enough yet.
Yeah.
But clearly the talent's there. He's young. Is just needs to hit the next level, and he did in Green Bay.
And if Hafley likes any of these guys, great. I love it. But I think that's what it's going to boil down to, unfortunately. And we don't even know what his criteria is. We don't even know how he likes guys. How do guys fit into the scheme? Those are all completely unknown. We don't know. If we knew, we would, not be behind a mic here. We'd be probably studying film somewhere. But yeah, and even Savage, if somehow you could get him on a really good deal, I don't mind him coming back. He's going to go out there and test the waters, and he's going to get something more than the Packers are going to offer.
Possibly.
It's happened before, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Savage will be back, but if he's back for the right price, sure.
But,
I don't care.
I mean, he was out of position in some key plays in the San Francisco game today. So,
yeah.
I mean, is he the right guy? The one thing I do like in Paul's article, the first guy he actually points out is Tayshaun Gibson today.
Yeah.
Who turns 34 this summer.
Yeah.
He's been in the NFL since 2012. So he's been in the NFL
don't think so.
a hot minute, Tay.
I pass on just because of that.
In 23, but he's a vet, Tay. He's a leader. In 23, completion rate of 44% against him, Tay. 9.2 yards per catch. Came away with 1 interception, 3 pass breakups, and was PFF's highest graded run defense safeties, Tay. And another reason I like to reference the Gibson is what he's quoted on saying about Jeff Hafley. Quote unquote from him, "I have nothing but love for Half," Gibson said at the Super Bowl. "I wouldn't be here without Half. Half believed in me. I was a third-year pro, and Half believed in me and gave me an opportunity. And not only is he a hell of a coach, but he's a student of the game. He puts players in the right position. I am happy for Half. He's going to have success in Green Bay." So, and I wanted to share that because, again, it's a guy familiar with Hafley.
It's true.
I like that Paul points that out. And I wanted to share with the universe what he had to say about this guy. We started talking about last week with our first taste. And you hear things like, I'm gonna share one more with you.
Yeah, do it.
A quote. And that is one of the guys that was on your list, also on Paul's list, and that's Jordan Fuller. PFF metrics generated 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and held quarterbacks to a completion rate of 57%. So pretty good. Here's another quote from him. Here's a quote from Fuller in regards to Half, also worked with Half. "I think his superpower is his mind and how he sees the game and how he understands the game. His in-game adjustments and him looking at us ready for certain looks that offenses will give us and stuff like that, it really felt like he gave us a winning edge." So again, these young guys, not in one case an old guy, in one case a young guy that was with him at, I believe, Ohio State. I mean, he's paying them huge, both of them are paying him huge compliments, how he is a student of the game and how he teaches these guys. So that's also what I shared. Why they fit, obviously they know Half, but they're also like, hey, this guy, he can coach. He minds his P's and Q's too.
Are you calling him Half from now on?
I think so.
I think it's Half?
I think it's here, man.
He's Half.
He's Half.
I was thinking Lur, but that doesn't kind of that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Okay. But since we did our last episode, and I don't know, just since we've hired Hafler up, it just, to me, this feels
Hafler.
Hafler.
Hafley.
Jeff
Hafley today. Oh, gotta love you.
So I just I just have a way better feeling about this than I ever did with Joe Barry. And I know that's very subjective. I'm telling you how I feel, and that may not amount to much, but I just view this feels different. When you hear players come out of the woodwork and talk about their coach, it's not like you're hearing other coaches and other media personalities say this. These are players that have been under him. That means something. That holds clout. That's the difference maker when you're actually when you actually have an effect on the people that are playing the game. That matters. So these are all indicators to me that this is great. This is a good hire. I am going to, definitely give this all the benefit of the doubt. Let's let this roll. He's got at least a year minimum to even do anything, just like everyone else has. The Packers, we had a slow roll on this stuff. Let it form, let it take shape. That's what they deserve. You can't be quick-handed about this. That's why that's what bad teams do. Is they knee-jerk react to things that just ruin your team over in the long run. Just do it right the first time. Take your time, develop, and work these guys in. I think this is a good hire with Halfley, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Yeah, 100%, Tay. I mean, another point that Paul made in the article about a guy you brought up, Alohi Gilman, he was a 2026 round pick by the Chargers. He, not affiliated with Halfley, Half, as we call him here on the pup list, Tay. He played for now Packers pass game coordinator Derek Ansley, who was the de facto D coordinator with the Chargers last year. So there's some connectivity there. Where there's connectivity, there can be, collectivity, Tay.
Yeah, so someone went out to the New York Jets team, and then all of a sudden, like a magnet. So yeah, hopefully this happens because, if it's not just me who's a novice at this stuff, identifying these guys, that this could be good, and you get real beat writers and researchers connecting the dots, then that looks pretty good. Yep. So I'm totally happy with Fuller or Gilman. Any of those guys, that's great.
Yeah, and I know you point out some of these high-priced guys like Antoine Winfield Jr., Tampa Bay Bucks safety, ranked number 8th overall on the free agent list. No, that's going to be way out of the Packers.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
They're not going to probably pick up the phone on that one. They're not going to overspend on that. Somebody will. I mean, he's a heck of a player. And then even Kyle Duggar with the Patriots and Cameron Curl. Again, I don't see Washington letting them get out of town. Why would you when you have that much cap space and you have a good football player? So neither of those really make sense. One that kind of sticks out to me that was not on your list is a familiar NFC North foe, but was with the New York Giants. Tay, that was Xavier McKinney. McKinney's coverage grades as a free safety was 81.4 and in the box 79.4. Top 10 marks among safeties in 2023. Obviously, he is a deep player. Over the past 3 seasons, 7.0 yards allowed per target. That ranks top 25 among safeties, and his 17 combined interceptions and forced incompletions put him in the top 20. So pretty solid player, veteran player that's been around, is a deep player. So can move up, do some things. So I think, that's a name that might fit in that list as well.
Yeah, he's 25. He had an 87.8 score this year, according to Pro Football Focus. So that's not bad. I just selected some guys that are probablys. Some of these guys are like maybe just on the cusp of like, that's never going to happen. So I just want to be realistic when I look at these guys. The Packers are never going to take those huge top guys. It's just never going to happen. But I think safety position is crucial. It's very, very important this year. I'm glad we kind of touched on that in this episode. I think, you're alluding to, maybe we'll get into some other ones later. We got some time.
Yeah, I think, over the next few weeks, we've got some time to talk about like the edge position. There's a ton of veteran edges in there. And I don't know why I said Xavier McKinney out of the NFC North, but obviously with the Giants. But yeah, that's a position group where you can probably look at a couple down the list that you go, that's a veteran guy who makes sense to bring in 1-year deal and see how he fits as a situational edge rusher.
Yeah, we have negative $2 million, $2.8 million. A lot of cap room to go. They talk about the guys like Jair, Kenny Clark, obviously David Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, Preston Smith having their deals reworked, right, to get to that extra whatever. And I think Ken Engel says in his mind, he says $30 million in yearly costs. And that's the draft picks, that's the pickup people, all this other fringe stuff. I think he's got it pretty high with 30 million. I think you mentioned maybe 15, 20.
I think it's going to probably be more like 20. I mean, I guess you could throw 25 in there for your in-season stuff as well.
So to get to that,
and then 24,
and then you're talking about that's just that stuff. So if you want to go get a free agent, you have to get more than that. You're going to have to get another
right. But nobody's accounting for what that salary cap increase will be.
Yes. Right.
Also, to go along with some of these moves they're going to make. So there's also just going to be that adjustment for the 2024 season. So they're going to probably get 7 to extra 10 just by that marker alone on that end, Tay. The big piece, I would encourage everybody to go out there. I think it was a week, not this Monday, but a week ago Monday, that Andy Herman on the Pack a Day podcast put out a whole thing just about David Bakhtiari and how the whole thing works out with the, if they do cut him and then he does come after the injury grievance and they just come to a mutual agreement. So essentially you're going to get about 20 million, but then you might have that grievance. So I think they'll end up somewhere. He ends up explaining all the different scenarios that could happen. They could restructure, they could trade him and the likelihood, I think it ends up being 9 scenarios, but the likelihood obviously really comes down to David Bakhtiari is going to be released, Tay, because financially it makes sense to do. And there'll be some type of injury grievance that they file and probably get to a point. Maybe it's around $4 million. So I think that's what he guesstimated, $4.5 million. So yeah, maybe you don't get the full $20 million but you still ended up saving, $16 million, but it's a no brainer, man. You get so much in just that one move on a guy. Let's be honest. You just don't know if his knee's ever going to hold up. Sure, when he played great in the Chicago game, can be really effective as a left tackle, especially a pass blocking left tackle. You love a guy protecting the blind side of your young, now franchise quarterback, but David Bakhtiari is 100%. You can't keep a guy with a cap number of $40 million in your roster, Tay, who has knees that you can't trust to play more than one game a year. That's that.
Something's going to have to happen, obviously. I like to look at it, and I looked at it today. I thought about this, like Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, right? They're they're not the same, but they're you can view them as very similar. Both need to rework their deals to help their team out. Both you think would want to come back. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe the relationship with the Packers and David Bakhtiari is broken, and you can't fix that. Do they want him on the team? Does he want to be on the team? Those are the questions, and that's, I think, what's driving all this. Like, you got to do something with them. Something's got to be done. With Aaron Jones, you're like, last year he took a pay cut. This year, he's probably going to push some money out, take more pay cut. He'll be around. He wants to be around. We want him to be around.
He was part of that team, though. He could see the direction they're going.
The dude's injured, too. The dude's injured a lot.
He knows that he's a little bit of a liability, of course.
So, what's the difference there? Like, why David Bakhtiari is an injury liability, but he's a great player. Why don't we want him? Well, I think there's something more, going on there with like the relationship here. So I think that's a lot.
But I mean, Aaron Jones is available sometimes, Tay. I mean, no, can he play in a 17-game season? Can he play 17 games? Absolutely not. But can he play, on average 9 games?
That might go down next year.
Fresh? Yeah, that's. But hey, that's 9 games, not one. Or will he ever play again? I mean, there's also that question, Tay.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that at this point. He had 2 surgeries already this offseason, or since that occurred again. I mean, it's just, you can't take that kind of risk when you have that kind of money available to you to move on from.
Absolutely. I don't
just can't.
I don't blame the Packers for doing any of that and considering that, but I guess I look at the men involved here. What's like Aaron Jones is willing to do something. Is David Bakhtiari, or is he going to stick his heels in the sand and not do something? Does he want to play for this team, or does he not want to play for this team? I think those are decisions that can affect what happens.
I think because of Ben bumps in the road. I mean, I talked about him a few weeks ago. It's just not even worth opening the door.
Yeah,
you just move.
We're done.
You move on.
We're
Everybody move their separate ways, shake hands, and let's go.
Because there's a potential scenario where he says, "Man, I love the Packers. I want to be here. What can we do? What can we do for me to stay?"
I think David will say I like the Packers, but I don't think I love you so much.
It's definitely not there.
No.
It's definitely not there.
No.
I just think I like to think about those things and kind of like, how does this compare to other people that are on the team doing it? Kind of in the same situation.
Remember, he should feel good too, though. The Packers paid him a lot of money. They didn't get the value out of it when they paid him a huge contract. And they still stood behind him, for the most part. And yeah, they're going to release him on that deal now. That's $40 million cap hit here in 24. But if they kept him, but you can't blame them. As an organization, I think they treat him pretty well. So.
Yep, yeah, I agree. Well, I'm looking forward to free agency, Ren. This is gonna be fun. I'm looking just as forward to the draft. This is gonna be great. I love this. This year is fun now. All of a sudden, we got good quicker than we thought. We had a lot of potential in that offense. We got some really good players on defense still. New defensive coordinator. We got some ammunition in the draft. We got money to spend in free agency. Like, this is great. This is a good time. This is really fun. So I'm looking forward to this. I don't know. I just this is gonna be a fun offseason.
It's gonna be super fun, Tay. And I mean, you look at positions like running back. Yeah, you get a couple in the middle of the draft. The Packers have 11 picks, Tay.
Yeah.
And Brian even said we've got ammunition to move up, move around, do whatever we feel there. So you got 11 picks there. You can go get 2 reasonably priced free agents. You can go a long way to really building this football team. I think we'll talk more down the road about, what those priorities too, not just like, hey, let's look at these veteran edge rushers, but maybe next week too, we talk about, what's the priority of those 6 positions we talked about, from running back, O-line, cornerback, edge, safety. Where do you prioritize them going in that first? You got those 5 top 100 picks.
Uh-huh.
Which ones do you really value there the most? And I certainly have my feels on that right away.
One thing I remembered I wanted to say, this is such a different offseason because we're not talking about drafting or acquiring a wide receiver in
somebody's out in some random Oregon. Yeah, no wide receiver. Do we need a veteran? No, none of that.
No,
don't want to hear about any of that crap. They got plenty of them.
Now,
nice? Could they surprise us with a wide receiver in the draft? Sure, they could. But no, I think they're good there, Chad. Yeah. I really think they're good at the moment.
Who would have saw that coming?
Right, crazy. But we're also not having to worry about some random dude in a cabin somewhere in the woods.
Yeah, right.
Trying to make us all go like, what gives?
Doing? Turn the light on, man.
Like, no, this is just football, Tay.
Yeah,
there's no more off-season drama, which is also awesome. This is our first off-season of that.
Yeah,
we didn't have that this last year.
Doesn't it feel great?
We're going in the darkness or coming out of the I don't know where we were yet here, but it was just like, it's totally different. It's like
stressless.
It's nice.
It feels good.
Just talk about stuff.
I know.
It's
just,
whatever, man.
Everything's pointing in the right direction too, which is a great place for us to be. So yeah, looking forward to it. Hope everyone out there is looking forward to it. We're gonna get out of here now. Thanks for listening. Go hit us up on our socials, emails at info@packeruniverse.com. Go check out our website, packeruniverse.com, and we appreciate your support.
Yeah, Tay, until we get to those veteran edge rushers and where we prioritize those draft picks on episode 260, Tay, on the pup list.
Bye.